Hi everybody, welcome to Safe Diving. In today's video I'm going to talk about SMBs or surface marker buoys because they're a very important piece of kit that all divers should carry with them whenever they're in the water. But they come in all sorts of different shapes, sizes and even colours, so I'm going to run through everything you should need to know about SMBs in this video. Surface marker buoys are a safety device that float on the surface of the ocean and mark a diver's location so that boats know exactly where they are under the surface. But as with most things, variety, innovation and evolution has increased their uses. Marker buoys are a multifunctional piece of kit today that you can use for anything from marking sunken treasure to emergency buoyancy if your BCD is ruptured. I like to carry at least one dSMB with me on every single dive, and I send one up on every safety stop so that I get my practice in, but I will always bring one with me. Because when you're on the surface, even when you have a fully inflated BCD, it's only really your head sticking out of the water, so you blend in really well to your surroundings, and your chances of being hit by a boat or going missing shoot up without an SMB. So if you're new to diving and you're thinking of increasing your safety stats and you're looking to invest in a proper SMB but don't really know what to look for, then let's take a closer look at SMBs. The first thing that you need to know about SMBs is the difference between an SMB and a dSMB. The D stands for delayed and separates the two basic types of SMB. A standard SMB like this is a permanent buoy that sits on the surface at all times of the dive from the beginning to the end. These ones are inflated at the beginning of the dive and the diver tows it behind them so that their location is marked at all times, meaning that boats will keep clear and your boat can keep a closer eye on exactly where you are and where you're going. Freedivers prefer to use these as they can be handy storage and resting points on the surface for them. Freedivers tend to spend more time on the surface anyway, so it makes sense to use a permanent buoy, and they can use a line from the buoy that's weighted at the other end, a shot line, to clip off to so they stay on track when they're zipping up and down. A delayed surface marker buoy is more commonly used by scuba divers. A dSMB comes down with you deflated like this with a reel or a spool attached to it. Whenever the diver wants to ascend or mark a location in the water, they can inflate the buoy so it shoots up to the surface, but they can stay connected because it's attached to the spool. dSMBs are typically long and thin so that when they're fully inflated, they can stand tall out of the water when some tension is put on the line. Permanent SMBs come in 3 or 4 different shapes. The standard blob, which is a round buoy, these are best for marking static locations like an entry and exit point. You also find a torpedo shape that's long and chunky. These are better for traveling because they're a bit more streamlined and show your direction of travel too when you're in the water. These are best for scuba divers if you're in a place that requires an SMB to be towed at all times. A life ring, which is more for competitive freediving. These usually have handles all the way around them for freedivers to hold onto and rest a bit, but again they're pretty static and they're not really made to be towed along behind you. The sled shape is good for storage and resting, again more for the freedivers and the spearfishers in particular, but sleds are a practical design. Permanent SMBs should have a diver down flag sticking out of the top that are either on a stick or they're actually part of the inflation section. If you're investing in an SMB, then you want one with the largest flag and pole that you can possibly find, or even fit aftermarket so that you can be better seen in tall waves. The main body of the buoy is inflated just like a lilo or an airbed, so give yourself plenty of time before a dive so that you don't get all lightheaded when you're inflating them. Before you inflate them though properly, most permanent SMBs will have a small section in the bottom that you fill up with water so that they stay upright in the water. That, or they have pouches for lead to make sure that basically you fill those up first before you pump them full of air. You can get some with a protective outer shell, which are much better if you're diving around the shore and you have to drag it around the rocks. And on the bottom and sort of around the sides, you'll have all sorts of anchor points and handles to tie lines to and hold on to the buoy. Other than that, you can find all sorts of different attachment points for any strobes and anything that you might need. You'll find all sorts on the outside of an SMB. A DSMB is usually simpler, but they can be packed full of features. Going from top to bottom, you can usually find some kind of grommets or attachment points for glow sticks, so the buoy can be better seen in the dark. You can also find reflective tape, which is this band here, and this is basically retro-reflective and sometimes even radar reflective. This makes it much easier for search teams to find you if you're ever lost at sea. These bands reflect back at the searchlights at pretty much all angles, so if someone is looking for you and shines a light in your direction, this collects all of that light and then shines it straight back at them so that you really stand out in the water. And in some cases it can even reflect radar, so you might actually pop up on boat and helicopters' radar, but it depends on the tape. It's usually the stuff that they put on life jackets, so it means that you'll be easier to find. And you can often find a clear pouch at the top of an SMB or DSMB, which is either for glow sticks again, or you can actually send a message up to the surface. If you dive with wet notes, they have soft pages where you can write a message to the surface, roll it up, so if you need an extra hang tank or whatever, roll it up and then send it up with the SMB to the surface for your surface support to collect and help out whilst you're stuck on a deco stop. Down from that is where basically most divers like to initial their SMBs so the surface knows who is who, but down the body of the buoy you'll either find a two-piece or a single-piece buoy, and you can tell the difference by the stitching. If the stitching is only down one side like this one, then the buoy can start to wear out along the folded edge, so it's best to have stitching down either side. The material of a DSMB is important too. PVC buoys are cheap, but they're not great and don't usually have amazing features to them, so try to stick to fabric buoys. Down to the bottom is where things get really interesting, because this is how you inflate your buoy underwater. Open-end SMBs or DSMBs, as the name suggests, have an open end, so you can inflate them with your octo, or even better, the exhaust from your primary, so that your buoyancy doesn't actually change. These often have flat sections of lead that help to keep the bottom down, but if you don't keep tension on that line and the buoy flops over on the surface, then it can deflate, which defies the whole point of the buoy. An upgrade from this is fluting, which is a bottleneck section of the buoy, so when it's fully inflated, the internal air pressure closes the opening so air can't escape. Only it needs to be fully inflated to properly close that opening. The best type of buoys, in my opinion, are closed cell buoys, because once they're inflated, they can't deflate by themselves. Closed cells will have a seal all the way around the bottom and no opening at the bottom. The last two usually have a stick like this at the bottom, which is how you inflate the DSMB. These are spring-loaded valves that you can either inflate by blowing into them or connecting a standard inflator and just pushing them together. It's the same fitting as your BCD, but it doesn't have the locking ring, so your hose will not attach to the buoy. It'll just slide straight off whenever you want it to. An inflator hose can pump air into the buoy much faster, so you know it's inflated properly, but remember that you don't need to fully inflate a buoy at depth. The gas inside will expand as the buoy ascends, so at 10 meters you only have to fill a buoy halfway. And because of these expanding gases, these buoys that seal themselves will have a one-way dump valve to allow expanding gases to escape. And you can find some SMBs that have teeny tiny tanks, affectionately named suicide bottles, that inflate the buoy when you open the valve. Only they are ridiculously expensive for DSMBs, they're cumbersome, the tanks don't need any testing, so you don't know what's going on inside them and if they're rusty inside and just one fill away from going bang, and traveling with them can be tricky. Aeroplanes don't tend to like pressurized containers very much, but it's nice to have an independent air supply so you can always inflate your DSMB. You'll often find a bungee or Velcro loop to help keep the buoy wrapped up neatly when you're not using it, and then you'll find a strap or a D-ring to attach your reel or your spool, and of course you can get novelty buoys so that you can really stand out on the dive site. In some circles, the colour of your SMB is very important, and there are a few choices nowadays. The classic colour is red, and this matches the red of our diver down flag. Red buoys mark locations in the water and stands out well against the blue or green water. If you're using a buoy to keep boats from getting too close to you, or if you're attaching a buoy to a location that you want to come back to, then use a red SMB. Yellow SMBs mean emergency in some circles, so if you're on a dive and something bad happens, you can send up a yellow buoy and the surface can get ready for whatever comes their way. Otherwise, yellow can get lost on the surface if the sun is low, and especially when it's behind you, so it's not a great overall choice. For this reason, they created black SMBs as well, which contrast well against bright backgrounds, but black SMBs have fallen out of fashion and some boats won't even let you have them, but you can see some two-tone buoys that give kind of a flashing effect as they turn. And of course you can find your pink buoys, which just means that you like to stand out on the dive site. In all honesty, pink actually is a decent colour to stand out quite well in the water, so it's becoming a popular choice. The shortest DSMB that you can find are around 30 centimeters long, but these are exclusively for training. They basically just cut out the middle part of the buoy so students can practice their techniques, but they're not much use outside of that. The short standard DSMBs tend to be around 90 centimeters long, which is okay for calm water, because remember that DSMBs are the opposite of an iceberg in that 10% of the buoy is usually under the surface and everything else stands upright. So your 90 centimeter DSMB is actually 80 centimeters tall out of the water. 120 and 150 centimeter are fairly standard sized DSMBs, and then of course you get anything up to 3 meter long SMBs, so there's no doubt that you'll be seen in the water. The choice is really up to you. Personally, I prefer the longest, the largest DSMB that I can possibly find, because no matter what the water is like when you jump in, if it suddenly turns nasty and the waves get really tall, I'd rather have the biggest, most obvious diver down flag so that a boat can pick me out of the water as easy as possible. So yeah, there are a few features to SMBs and they've specialised a lot for different uses, but hopefully I touched upon all of them so that you can make a more informed decision. I did, however, skip over another type of buoy, and that's lift bags, but they're a very different animal, and I can probably do an entire video just on lift bags, but they only really have their one single use and they don't work too well on marking your location in the water, so I kind of skipped over them for this video. But what else did I miss? What style of DSMB do you like to use and why? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this, and let me know what type of equipment you want a closer look at in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.